This video reviews the main topics we went over during the week of February 2nd. The first topics are the pan and zoom functions. Using our 3-button mouse, the scroll wheel acts as a zoom. Simply by rolling the wheel, we can zoom. If you don't yet have a 3-button mouse, you can access the zoom functions over here. And you can select specifically which zoom function you want by hitting the downward arrow to select which function you want. Typically, zoom extents can be used in the following way. So if you're doing a drawing, even when having a 3-button mouse, you can hit the zoom extents to expand your drawing to the size of the screen, and then use the scroll wheel to bring it back 1 or 2 zoom sizes to give you some area around the drawing in order to work. Pan can be accessed simply by pressing down on the scroll wheel. This allows you to essentially pan the screen or move your objects. So with the combination of zoom and pan, you can effectively take anything from wherever it is and move it to the center of the screen and zoom it to a reasonable size. Pan can also be accessed with the menu bar over here. And in this case, you use the mouse button to access the pan. The next feature I want to talk about is undo. And everyone is aware of the typical Windows undo. Available up here, we hit the backwards arrow, and what you're going to see is the whole line, or the set of lines that I've drawn, completely disappears. Now if we go into the menu bar, or excuse me, the menu box, and type undo, or we can simply type U for undo, what you see is only one line disappears. So only the last thing that we did disappears. When you type U again, the next one disappears, etc., etc. So this is a little bit, gives you a little more control of the undo function, as opposed to completely deleting. And this is true if you've drawn a very big, a very large number of lines. You don't want to go ahead and delete all of your lines just because you made one small mistake. So going into the text box is often much better. And again, a reminder, in the text box, once you're in the text box, if you move the mouse out of the text box, you're no longer in the text box. Okay, we did talk about the grid, and we can turn grid on and off right here, and then we can access the drafting settings from the Tools Drafting Settings menu. And here we have the snap and grid, and F7 actually turns the grid on and off. We hit F7, OK, and the grid is off. And we hit F7, if I hit it on the keyboard, see we turn it on and off. Orthogonal restricts us to only drawing orthogonal lines, and this is the F8 key. When I'm in orthogonal mode, I can only draw horizontal or vertical lines. If I take myself out of orthogonal mode, and you can see that the box is no longer lines, you can leave it in orthogonal mode, and if we want, we can leave the grid on as well. Next, in drafting settings, talk about object snap. Object Snap allows us to start and end drawings at certain known points. And the best way to talk about that is to show the difference with Object Snap on and off. So Object Snap is F3. And actually this is Object Snap here. We can turn it on and off right here. So let's turn it off. And I'm going to draw a line, try to draw a line. I want it to start right at the same point where this line ended up. And you can see it's virtually impossible. We can try. And we got pretty close. And we can pan and zoom, and as we zoom up, we see we're not really that close at all. So we can go ahead and delete this. But now if we turn on the Object Snap, and by the way, this arrow allows us to select right here what we want to be able to snap to. So if we need to quickly turn something on and off, we can do it directly here instead of going directly right into that drafting settings menu. Now once it's turned on, then when we come over here, we see the box light up. See this green box. And once we see that green box, we will actually start the line right at the end point of the previous line. And we had a midpoint, so if we shrink this down, pan it up into the center, we could start a line directly from the midpoint as well. And we know that this is the midpoint. AutoCAD is telling us that this is the midpoint. That triangle is telling us that's where the midpoint is. And if we look here, we can see we've turned that on. If we turn this off, then we go to do a line, you'll see we don't see the midpoint. We only see the end point. Okay, so the next function, drafting settings, Object Snap tracking. Actually, before we do Object Snap tracking, let's do polar tracking. So I'm going to turn on polar tracking. And polar tracking is like orthogonal on steroids. And let me first turn off orthogonal. We'll turn off orthogonal after once we leave this menu. So I'm going to turn polar tracking on, and I'm going to leave the increment angle set here at 45. And you can see over here, this turned on. And we can set the angles over here if we want. So we're set 45, 90, 135, 180, etc. So what does this mean? This means when we start, say I'm drawing from here, we get these tracking lines. So this will automatically draw a line whenever you're close to, say, 0 degrees, you're going to get a line that's at 0 degrees. And you can see here, even if I'm off the line a little bit, it'll still put the line at 0 degrees. So it's easier to make a straight line. And because I had it set at 45 degrees, when I get to 45 degrees, I'll get a line at 45. And when I'm 90, there's another one, and another one at 135 degrees. So that's what polar tracking does. And if we set our polar tracking at 90, 180, 270, and 360, that is in fact just like orthogonal, except we don't have that restriction that we can only draw orthogonally. We get these green lines, but we don't need to draw only at orthogonal. We have the green lines, but we don't have to only draw orthogonally or vertically, horizontally. We can draw at any angle we want. Okay, so now finally, the Object Snap tracking. And in order to best show that, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to just draw a box here. And you probably didn't see that, but I actually just used object snap tracking. All right, so I finished the box. Or maybe I didn't, because I don't think it's turned on yet. I'm going to go back into drafting settings. I'm going to turn on object snap tracking. And online. So this is object snap. So I can start here. And object snap tracking says once I get a line from here, I can pull a tracking line down from that point. So it allows you to do interesting things. So I could, if I wanted to draw a vertical line up from, if I wanted to take this line and bring it only over as far as this point goes, I could come down here, bring up a tracking line, and you don't hit the mouse button to get the tracking line. Tracking line is automatic. You only hit the mouse button when you wanted to draw the actual line. So I could then kind of close that box off. So that's object snap tracking. And the final is snap from. So snap from is when you want to actually, let's say I want to draw a box within this box. Or a box that's offset from, let's say, this corner point. So I'll click on line, and then this is my snap menu up here. I'll click on snap from. Now it wants in the base point, so I'm going to click right here. This is my base point. And now it's looking for an offset. So for the offset, I'm going to type at, and I don't know, I'm going to choose 0.5, 0.5 for my offset. So I type at 0.5, comma 0.5. So I just started a new line that was offset 0.5 inches in the X and 0.5 inches in the Y from this point. So that's what snap from does. So that pretty much covers everything that we went over last week, all of the individual details. Oh, and the final one, which is very easy. You're using these. Once you're using the polar tracking, you don't need to type both the X and the Y dimensions. So when you're moving, let's say in the X dimension, once I have a line going in this dimension, if I want to make a line an inch long, all I have to do is type 1 and hit enter. And that does it. If I'm moving vertically, I want a line of length 2, I can just type a 2 and hit enter. And I make a line of length 2. If I want to make a line of length 3 here, I type a 3 and then enter. And that makes a line of length 3. And I'm not sure why that line of length 1 looks so short, but I want to come down by 3, type a 3, and then go back by 4, and then up by 1, and we complete that box. So you don't always have to type both the X and the Y dimensions.